thing, we need to get Brian a Samsung Galaxy S3 because how come I have never figured this out? How can we talk about this in the beginning of the podcast? I don't get your fucking phone.
I don't know.
Jesus fucking Christ! What kind of show is this?
You know it.
No, you'd break it down immediately.
Look what I did with the iPad this week.
Well, you do it with everything. You're weird. You're weird. You're a weird dude. I really love it. But look, I firmly endorse Ting. It's a fucking badass company. You can split a plan. You can split the minutes with your girlfriend, your wife, your buddy, whatever you want to do. There's a lot of different flexible options. It's just an excellent company. And that's the only things that we're ever going to support on this podcast, whether it's audible.com or onit.com or anything we support. We are 100% into supporting ethical companies that are cool, that sell products that we believe in. That's really it. You know, when we sell Alpha Brain, or we sell Shroom Tech Sport, or any of the products from Onnit, I use all that shit. I've used all that shit way before I ever had any sort of a business connection to it. I've always been a fan of, first of all, healthy food. I mean, it's just like a dog. You have to say that. It is perfect. I have like one new twice putting the things that the eyebrows. I think we're gonna sue any. However, before that, I had no idea that there were so many mysteries in terms of like how ancient structures were constructed. You know, who the people were that actually designed them and built them, and it's an amazing part of the history of the human race that is really doesn't get enough attention, in my opinion, and I don't understand why.
Well, I think we've somehow kind of like, we have this 4000 BC wall in there.
Yeah.
And anything before that, people just don't seem to be interested in. And it doesn't get into textbooks. It doesn't get into official kind of anything. And anything before that is just treated as if it's sporadic. We've been around for 35,000 years. And we're led to believe that for 30,000 years of that existence, we did nothing. We sat on our bum.
Is it because of the fact that the information wasn't available when the people who are professors right now were teaching, and they've been teaching for 20 and 30 years, some of them, and they don't want to like rewrite what they have already taught? Like there's an ego thing to it. That they've taught you that this was built in 2000 BC, and that's where it ends.
Absolutely. I mean, there's one example in the book, and the opening chapter is called The New Inquisition, and it's about several cases, but one of them is from the 1920s. Basically, in the 1920s, the discovery was made in France, Blozell. And if this was true, early indications were that writing was thousands of years older than everybody had been writing about. All of these professors were going to be proven wrong. And they just couldn't let that happen. So what they did was you had a 16-year-old farmer boy who just found a hole in his field, who said, like, hey, look what I have found. And they threw him in jail. And they pretended that he was thrown in jail for fraud, and ever after science could say, like, oh, he was arrested on fraud, wasn't he? We don't have to look at this guy because he was arrested on fraud. And he was completely vindicated. There was no evidence whatsoever that he had made fraudulent claims about the artifacts which he'd found. But ever since the 1920s, according to the island free walls of academics, this is a complete thing which they don't have to do anything.
Wow. So you think there was a conspiracy to label it a fraud and him a fraud just so that they didn't have to address it?
Yes.
Well, how is that possible? Isn't it weird that academics are supposed to be the leading lights of thought? They're supposed to be the people that are at the forefront of knowledge, but for the most part they are. But there are exceptions and there are issues. The Egyptologist, that guy who was arguing with Robert Schoch and Graham Hancock in John Anthony West in that famous video, where they're dealing with this obvious water erosion on these stones, and all these geologists are saying, like, you've got a problem here because this was cut at like 9,000 plus BC. There's no other way around it. If you look at climate change, you look at that it had to be thousands of years of rainfall to create these erosions. And the way he reacted was so egotistical and non-scientific. It was really infuriating. He was laughing like, what evidence of this civilization from 10,000 years ago do you have? And it was so infuriating to see a guy who's supposed to be the man out there at the forefront of knowledge when it comes to this particular subject. He's a guy who's a professor at a university, a highly respected one, and here he is. He's carrying the flag for knowledge in this particular subject, and he is if he could see how gross it looked to watch that reaction. Like, why don't you tell me what the fuck you think would be around from 10,500 years ago, dude? Because I don't think it's going to be much. I really don't think... If we barely can find shit from 2,000 years ago. We barely find shit from 2000 BC. Barely. We find, like, a little pottery. Oh, we found some place where everybody got killed by mud. Quick, get over here. Let's clean this shit with a paintbrush. But you want to go more time back from that than it is from us to the construction of the pyramid, than it is from the established 2,500 BC, which is insanity. That's an insane amount of time. You're talking about like 8,000 years before that. You're supposed to know or have any evidence whatsoever other than giant stones. What the fuck do you think would be left, right?
Yeah, I mean, the great Dr. Zayed who was, and just to kind of come back on the conspiracy angle there, he, in the 1980s, had actually found evidence that the pyramids, the Great Pyramid of Giza, carbon dating results were in, uncontested, 800 years old. Now, that might not seem much if 2,400 could make it 3,200 BC, but it's 800 years. It's basically...
fucking long time, man.
And they don't want to do it, so what do? For the last 30 years, they haven't published these findings, because for them to play the game, it has to be published in a peer-reviewed scientific journal. And so by not publishing this, they can pretend that these carbon dating results don't exist. And they can pretend that everything is fine, that the Great Pyramid is built in 2,400 BC. They set the rules, they play the game, and then they shout at everybody else, as you're pointing out when Robert Rogan and everybody else comes to this thing. You're idiots.
It's clear that there's ego involved, which is very, very disturbing when it comes to knowledge, when it comes to something that is obviously a work in progress. The uncovering of ancient civilizations is clearly a work in progress. So to be arrogant about what the results are just based on the fact that you've taught these to students for so many years and you don't want to admit that you were wrong when you're talking about the time of the construction of the Sphinx, whatever it is that it is that starts getting controversial. There's a weird thing where you see their ego flare up, and it's so gross, and it's so transparent. It's really weird to watch them argue like little girls. Like, the way they talk about it, it's so egomaniacal. It's like, what are you talking? You know exactly what the fuck happened? No, you don't. No, you don't. And you need to take this into consideration. You've got a real issue. Because if this guy's right, then you're way off. If this guy's right, and the Sphinx enclosure was cut 9,000 plus BC, then you got a real problem on your hands. Because you've established this whole timeline that doesn't work anymore. Because there's obviously some really... So then we have to figure, what the fuck happened that we had this incredible sophistication at 10,000 BC, and then there's obviously been some declines here and there. There's a really obvious system if you really pay attention, like Göbekli Tepe, or all of these really 14,000 plus BC things. It's like, this isn't like a linear graph. It doesn't like go straight up. There's like probably some fairly sophisticated cultures wiped out, fairly sophisticated wiped out, and other places just like today. You can go to Africa today, and there's a lot of people that if Western civilization didn't go in there and give them things, they wouldn't have radios, they wouldn't be wearing underwear, they would be living exactly the same way they lived thousands and thousands of years ago. At the same time, on other parts of the world, people are dropping bombs on people. People are doing nuclear tests. People are, they're doing the Large Hadron Collider. That's all taking place at the exact same time. I suspect that's always been like that. I suspect that there's been some super duper sophisticated cultures where, for whatever reason, these people were ever able to figure out how to use agriculture earlier, figure out how to use societies, figure out how to be calm enough to start breaking things down and thinking it through, and try and figure out how to improve things. And then it's this exponential process in these groups, and some of them get better out of the others. And it seems to be like, so who wasn't attacked by hordes of barbarians, Those dudes seem to figure out how to, get it. Like, all you need is like a couple of decades to get ahead. If you look at like what we've accomplished in 100 years, it's really a staggering thing. That's the most staggering thing about whether it's Baalbek, the stones in Lebanon, or Egypt, or anything. The most staggering thing is how far we've come in 100 years. And to think that this shit was all going on thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. Those numbers are just bullshit to us. You start telling someone 7,000 years ago, it's like, blah, blah, blah. I hear noise coming out of your mouth. I really don't, I can't say it. I don't know what it means.
But I think it's probably because of the way history is thought. It is like, you know, for 30,000 years we sat on our butts, then we stood up and we scrambled around for some food, and then all of a sudden in 4000 BC somebody finds a light switch and all of a sudden it's civilization. That's the standard view, and it doesn't work like that. And then when you confront them with things like Gobekli Tepe or Catalina or anything like that, you say, well, you know, they were very close. They're like a few thousand people in a city somewhere who were doing this, but it was all isolated. And it just doesn't work. Great empires exist, great empires fall. Our ancestors were saying about this as well. They're basically saying about Atlantis, you know, this civilization existed, then it disappeared. And we kind of go, no, because we were sitting in the cities phase of civilization 10,000 years ago. Nobody was building anything, nobody was doing anything. And it is just, ugh.
Yeah.
Because you can't argue with them. They know for sure about how this was. We were sitting on our butts for thousands of years, then we scrambled around it, and then all of a sudden in 4000 BC we finally see the light, and here we are. And it's very much like the evolution of mankind taken to the absolute extreme.
It's a weird sort of cognitive denial. It's very strange. It's very strange that it's like labeling something a conspiracy theory. Like, oh, are you a conspiracy theorist? Like, automatically, or even how the new one is truther. That's hilarious. The 911 people, like Truth 911 Truth, they became truthers. Like somehow or another, it's an insult to be a truther. That shit's ridiculous. So,
well, I mean, I was doing something for my blog, which is going to be on somewhere in the next few days, and it's about the Kennedy assassination and the single bullet theory. And the single bullet theory was invented by Arlen Specter, who was a very junior lawyer at that time, and he basically saw the Zapruder film, which basically is a guy shooting film of Kennedy, and they thought that the Mannlicher Carcano, which also was using, shot rifle, we could fire it at intervals of 2.3 seconds. And they see on this film how Kennedy reacts to a gunshot and Connolly reacts to a gunshot as well, and the interval is less than 2.3. So all of a sudden they have this issue of like, oh, there are two riflemen there, or we need to try and explain it away. So comes in Specter, junior lawyer, who basically gets to solve this problem. And he comes up with the single bullet theory, which basically says the shot goes into the back of Kennedy, somehow travels up, goes down, jumps up again to go into Connolly's back, kind of like keeps traveling up a bit, goes down again into his wrist, and then up again. And he calls it, you know, the magic bullet theory. And when he goes public with this, he basically says, like, I don't expect anybody to do this shit. This is going to be contested in a year, 5 years, 100 years from now. Nobody should believe this. And guess what? Academic history has taken this on wholesale. And everybody who says the magic bullet theory is just crap, they're labeled conspiracy theorists.
It's not just crap. It's like you're almost it's almost unexcusable to believe it. It was invented because of the guy in the underpass who got hit with a ricochet. They had to attribute, that was another reason for it. They had to attribute a bullet to this one guy hitting a curb, and it ricocheted him, and he had to go to the hospital. So they knew that one of the bullets missed. One of the bullets hit this curb. And the bullet they found was in the gurney of Governor Connolly when they brought him to the hospital. So the idea is that this fucking bullet came out of this dude's body in like perfect form. It was just laying around there. No one ever noticed it. Like he got shot and it was like in his pocket or something. It went through his body and landed in his pocket, and then fell out conveniently right where they were looking around to see if there's any evidence. Oh look, we found the bullet that did all the damage. It looks to me, when I watch the Zapruder film, I've never heard anybody say this, but there's a scene, there's part of it where it does look like his head definitely goes back and to the left, but the spray looks like it's going forward. I wonder if he was hit more than once by different snipers at the same time. I mean, I wonder how many actual shots went into his body. Because they know that there was the one that went through the front that they tried to disguise as a tracheotomy. They know there was definitely an entry wound in the neck, and that's when he grabs his neck. Just that alone, the fact that was deceptively labeled as a tracheotomy hole, why would you do that? Why would you? The only reason is because you don't want to show an entry wound front of his neck. An entry wound looks looks so much different than export. Everybody knows that. So you had to come up with something. Like it's a fucking round hole in the middle of this guy's neck. So they decided to make it a trach scar, which is just deception.
Yeah.
Just that alone.
But we are led to believe that it's all official history. It's kind of like a rubber stamp, and so much is rubber stamp with this absolute BS on so many things. And that is 50 years ago.
Yeah.
And when we're coming back to trying to find out what really happened 8,000 years ago, what we can't even do it 50 years ago.
The rubber stamp, those motherfuckers. It's those rubber stamp people, man. It really is. That really is what it is. And the notion that certain things make you a ridiculous person if you discuss them, whether it's Sasquatch or whether it's UFOs or whether it's anything. The idea that human beings even exist and exist in this form with cell phones and fucking space travel and airplanes, and that is so crazy. Just the reality of people is so crazy. I don't know why anybody would argue any ridiculous proposition about aliens or the possibility of life that we haven't discovered on other planets. Like, just think about how fucking weird we are. The fact that we even exist is so mind-blowing and exist in this form. For sure, it could be, there could be UFOs around us all the time that we can't see because they know how to hide. There could be easily some way, or you just are just completely invisible. It doesn't seem outside the realm of possibility that they could deceive us, that they could figure out a way to be a tree, Why? I mean, and who knows if like the idea of like cloaking devices, like all the shit that we're coming up with, like where we project an image of who knows what the fuck is up there that we can't see.
Maybe they're Asians.
We need to just jump in front of a train today.
Well, one of the questions I get asked, Brian, is whether cats are aliens, whether they're aliens in disguise.
Aliens, cats? No. What if Chinese people are more alien than human? When the Nibiru people came, the Anunnaki came, they just added a little more alien, a little more chimp to like my people, the Italians, like a little more chimp.
I believe that more than a tree.
You believe that more than them being a tree?
Yeah.
Well, what about if they were the wind?
Well, I mean, there's Paul Davis is a guy who's an astrobiologist at the University of Phoenix, and he's basically writing a paper on material technology, which he basically kind of like goes like, I'm going to talk about it, but I have no idea what I'm talking about because it's so out there. But he's basically saying that alien beings, if they were to come here or if they came here, that technology might actually not be physically real. That it might be something kind of like, some kind of energy cloud in front of them, which they can direct with thought and can do stuff with that. And you kind of think like, well, we're almost there, because a few days ago there was some headline whereby, I think in Japan, where they somehow have been able to map if somebody's thinking about, I think it was a tomato or something like that, the computer could pick up the pattern that this guy was thinking about tomatoes. So we are rapidly moving in directions of really being able to pick up what we're thinking, and computer technology being able to identify what we're thinking.
Yeah, and who knows whether they're going to be able to enable consciousness to exist inside of computers, or consciousness to exist inside of a signal. If they can get consciousness to exist inside of a computer, think about how much energy and how much information is distributed just through wireless internet, just flying around all around you constantly as fucking videos and ones and zeros, and who knows if one day they'll be able to do that with consciousness, just broadcast consciousness like a Wi-Fi signal, so that you essentially are everywhere all the time if you choose to be. So the aliens are here without even physically being here.
Yeah, well, you said that aliens were wind and that Wi-Fi's in the air, so the internet is aliens.
Dude, what if the hurricanes are alien?
What? I just smelled an alien. Did you do something?
No. It's a child. I apologize. I'm just a fucking serious author here, dude. You're just messing this whole thing up. When you when you tell people that you're on that show, Ancient Aliens, isn't that like automatically one of those things where they go, oh, okay, you believe in aliens? Like, oh, you believe in UFOs?
It's amazing. In America, there has been a complete change. The answer is no longer no.
Really?
People kind of like go like, wow, interesting, this is being shortage is being discussed. It's got phenomenal ratings, and it's got an attraction from 5 to 95, and all of a sudden, I think this is largely due to the format of the show as well. Really, people are into this. People are beginning to question things. I get feedback from university professors, and specifically high school teachers, and the high school teachers are saying, we used to say something like very dogmatically, something like, let's say water is liquid. They can still get away with that, but some of the other claims they're making, students are now challenging. They're saying, well, where did you get that from? And before, there was this acceptance of, oh yeah, the teacher says so we have to accept whatever this knowledgeable person says, and we will just write it down. And all of a sudden, high school teachers, even university students, are basically saying, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to ask where this came from. Why do you come to that stand? And I think that's interesting, and it's definitely something which is happening in America, because the series is also in different countries. I kind of like being told it in all countries. Definitely in like Europe, it's definitely still like, oh, you believe in aliens?
Well, here's the thing that's happening in this country especially, and it's a thing that you can call intellectual wealth. And financial wealth might still be locked down by the elite, but intellectual wealth is no longer. Intellectual wealth is, look, you don't really have to have any sort of formal education, and you could educate yourself just by reading the internet. You literally, any subject, you could find forums where virtually any topic that you wish to engage in and want to figure things out about could be discussed. You could go to, you could download virtually every book that's ever been written about it, and it's not like it used to be. So it's not like when they go into a college, the professor is intellectually incredibly wealthy and the children are intellectually poor. No, the children have fucking smartphones and they could Google anything. Like, no, that's not why. It was 1726 and they found it this way. And that professor looks like an idiot now because he's got some old, outdated information.
Yeah.
It's not easy to just run a bunch of kids telling lies.
Well, what do you do with kids?
These fucking kids these days and they're aliens. But the idea of aliens has always been sexy. It's always been, it's daunting with the idea. Wow, could you imagine if it is real? What would it be like? And that's why there's 1,000 fucking movies about it.
I was going to say Hollywood down the street.
Yeah, just look. It's one of those things where I don't know what would happen if it was proven to be real, but I don't think it would be good. If they could prove that there are aliens and aliens exist, I think people are too stupid. I think they'd just start jumping off buildings. I don't think they'd be able to handle it.
Yeah, there's various scenarios there, definitely. I mean, the War of the Worlds thing from the 1930s with Orson Welles.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the classic thing of the panicky situation. Then there are those who say that it was exaggerated, that it was really isolated, that it were the headlines of the newspapers who invented this kind of thing. I don't know. I mean,
Depends how sexy the alien is, I think.
If it's attractive
Well-formed,
alien.
Yeah, if it's an attractive alien, we might not panic and jump off. We might try to
Right,
figure
like
out
what if
the
they
fuck-
arrive and they're all hot as fuck,
Yeah,
like Natasha Hendricks in Species, remember that?
maybe this is a conspiracy. Maybe everything about the UFO cover-up is happening because they were ugly and they were not photogenic. And,
It's too insect-like.
and the government is just waiting for beautiful aliens to come, and then there will be disclosure.
Meanwhile, there's going to be a new movie about that very same subject. Now that they've heard this, someone will write a movie about it. It'd be awesome. Hot
Is
aliens
the show
from space.
copyrighted?
No, damn it, we forgot. We forgot to copyright that. Yeah, I think for whatever reason, I think people are barely able to handle this reality. For whatever reason, whether it's they're not living the life they want to live, they're not around too many people that think a lot, they don't have much education, they don't have a strong mind, they have a lot of phobias, they have addictions to substances, whatever the fuck it is. There's people that are, a lot of people that are barely hanging on to this life as is.
It's an awful lot of framework. People love to have a framework, and going back to children need a framework. They need structure in their life, and adults, so many adults need to do that as well. And once that framework is in place, and I think this is tying it back to like the academic professors, it's really hard to break out of that. And it's like, whether it is things like hallucinogenic substances, whether it is things like death experiences, life after death, all of these things, aliens, lost civilizations, they all somehow are pushing this cardboard thing of the framework, saying, help, we need to get through, because there's something outside of this framework. And basically people say, no, framework, keep it intact.
Yeah, the Ancient Aliens one is one where I've had the conversation with people where I sort of described the Zechariah Sitchin thing. There's a Sitchin scenario, what could have happened, and they look at you like they're trying to find a way to get away. They look at you like, what the fuck kind of stupid conversation am I locked in with this idiot? If you've never read any of Zechariah Sitchin stuff, I'll just summarize it very quickly. And Sitchin believes that we were engineered by these alien beings, and that it's all in the ancient Sumerian text. His translations of it are all that these people came down and did genetic experiments on human beings and created us to mine for gold, which is really a trip. It's really a mind fuck when you start thinking about how gold has always been valuable. And you're like, why? You can't even make a sword out of it. Like, why did people back then, why was anybody willing to take, like, a bag of gold for your donkey? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, why did it have so much value? The Zechariah Sitchin scenario is that these aliens have ruined their environment, and they needed gold dust to suspend their atmosphere to protect them from the radiation. What's really fucked up is scientists didn't figure that, like, when they were started to discuss possible climate change, erosion of the ozone layer. What would they do to protect the United States if we lost all of our ozone, our atmosphere? And the number one solution was to suspend reflective particles in the atmosphere. And so Sitchin had actually translated this in the 70s. This is like far before scientists had even proposed that. So it's really kind of interesting. Like, that's one little piece of that Sitchin thing that makes you go, whoa. Like, how did he figure that out? Was that, I don't know. I'm not smart enough to know about the environment and climate change and how much they knew about the ozone layer back in the 1970s.
Well, he was a very controversial man. He was very kind of like adamant and set in his ways, and he wasn't a warm character, but he definitely was an interesting character. And towards the end of his life, together with Inner Traditions, his publisher, he began to kind of like push for the DNA analysis. He wanted to do some DNA testing, and unfortunately, he died before any of that could have happened. But it would have been interesting to see where he was going to take it, because he really was pushing his reputation and his legacy on the line there. And again, it didn't happen because he died. But
and the DNA evidence he was trying to find was that we were genetically manipulated and created. That's why the idea is that's why we're so different from every other monkey that's here. I mean, it's so clear that we're different. We're so much different than all the rest of them. And people are like, well, we are apes. We're from a different branch. How the fuck did this one branch just take off? This one branch has cars, and this one branch, everybody else is the same. They're all just throwing their own shit. Even the chimps, they're the baddest. Yeah, the chimps are the baddest, smartest motherfuckers, the closest to us.